Hi, everyone.
Hello, folks.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of our Sunday Q&A video. It's
Our rolling episode.
our rolling episode. Yes, we're actually, interestingly, we're just leaving. So it's Friday morning when we're recording this. We are just leaving breakfast with some couple friends that you guys might know. The boys at the Under the Table podcast.
Daryl and TK.
Daryl and TK. We just had a nice breakfast with them. And if you're watching this, head on over after and watch their show because they got a great show there too. But
Daryl took care of the bill. Thank you for that, Daryl.
Yes, thank you for the wonderful breakfast, Daryl. That was a great bagel. But let's get into the questions here. So today's questions, we will start off with Elizabeth Lavictoire. Elizabeth Lavictoire. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Sounds French.
But Elizabeth asks, how is the market in Stoville? Same as Markham?
Similar in a lot of ways to a lot of other parts of the GTA. It depends, really. I'm trying not to be vague, but I can't help it to answer this question. It depends on what you're selling or what you're buying. It's the other side of the coin. If it's an entry-level type detached home, it's a bit more activity in that, and prices of held stronger. They're still softer, but held stronger than, say, your larger, more expensive detached home, or say an entry-level townhouse or condo townhouse. We recently purchased a condo townhouse there for a family, and got a relative to where prices were before, got a very, very good price.
That particular one was purchased for, what was it? 200,000 more than what we purchased it for back at the peak?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. Something like that. But yeah, so I guess it depends on what market you're in, right? Because detached condo, I know there's a bunch of new townhouses up there. So it really depends, right?
It all depends.
Yes. Okay. So next comment here comes from Vert911. And Vert911.
Vert's always commenting.
Vert's always commenting.
He's always there.
Thank you for your comments, Vert. And Vert says, Santosaurus Rex.
You know what? Actually, that name doesn't bother me so much.
Kind of rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, try getting that on a hockey jersey on the back. Santosaurus Rex.
You might be feared if you put that on a hockey jersey.
That's what I mean. I don't mind that name so much, Vert.
So, Vert says, when you say plan to hold it for a long time, what's a long time?
Whoa!
40 years?
72 years. It is, man, I'm going to be a little vague again. I don't mean to, but you kind of, it depends on what your exit strategy is. Look, if you're looking to live in the property that you buy, just know that if you sell it in, say, a year or two, there's a good chance you're probably not going to be realizing a profit. But is the magic number 3 years, 4 years, 10 years? It's irrelevant as long as you know going in, whatever your exit strategy is, it might have to change. So there's just hold on to it until whatever goal you have. If your attitude is I'm going to hang on to this until I make 200,000. Well, is that going to be in 3 years, or is that going to be in 10 years or 15 years? It's hard to say. I don't know. Before all this, over the last couple of years, it seemed every 8 to 10 years, prices were doubling. I think it's a bit of a stretch to think that might happen now, but you just don't know. So just be prepared. Whatever your exit strategy is, it might not work out that way, and be prepared to hold longer.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so next comment here comes from Quicks Prime. And Quicks Prime says, the vast majority of commenters are just trolling Santo at this point. And obviously, of course, we are talking about all the different names that that people have given my dad. It's crazy how many names. Every comment, someone's putting a different name, and a lot of them are very creative. Quicks Prime, I don't know if they're trolling us, but we are having fun with it because it's actually it's been a source of laughter for us, so we enjoy it.
We have fun, but
as long as people don't
Santosaurus Rex.
Santosaurus
I gotta
Rex
say,
doesn't sound bad.
Doesn't bother me.
Doesn't sound bad. I might change the little name tag on the bottom of the videos
Santosaurus
for this week. But yeah, no, I think we're all just having fun with it. Anyways, next comment here comes from SadikZ, and they say, it all depends on when the condo was purchased. If it was purchased before 2019, those owners are having positive cash flow. Beyond 2019 was expensive for condos. So this is one of the things that I feel like we always have to, or I like to bring up and kind of preface these videos with, because, we talk about it often, right? Someone bought a 1,000 square foot condo at, $2,000 a square foot.
Yeah.
They got a $2 million condo, and that's now worth really 1.4, right? Like that's less. That's a massive loss. But a lot of these losses are being realized for people that purchased relatively recently, right?
Yeah.
And so it's there are a lot of condo owners and a lot of people that have purchased condos before 2019 that they've made a ton of money, right? They've made a ton of money. They're cash flow positive.
Well, I think that's the question. It's more of just on the focus of cash flow positive.
Mm-hmm.
It's man, if you bought more recently, if you're buying now, I just had a conversation with somebody yesterday who was thinking of buying a condo as an investment to rent it out. And that's the first thing I spoke about. Are you okay not being cash flow positive?
Yeah.
And his attitude, well, no, why does that even make sense? I go, well, if you're going to buy with the minimum down, it's almost a certainty you're going to be cash flow negative.
Yeah.
And the reason people did it over so many years in the past is because appreciation was there. They were investing out of their pocket $6,000, $10,000 a year in the being cash flow negative. But their value of the condo is going up $50,000, $60,000. Yeah. So they just saw it as an investment. That was fine. But that appreciation factor is gone today. It's just not there.
Yeah.
And actually it's the other way. It's not even prices are not even staying the same. It's a negative depreciation. So actually depreciation is negative. So I don't think I needed to say it's a negative depreciation.
That's right. Okay. So next comment here comes from D. Trent.
Trent, he was like retired for a while from commenting, and now he's come back with a vengeance.
And D. Trent, this is in regards to the video where we were talking about sellers are shocked, basically.
I remember,
at prices. And so D. Trent says, elephant in the room, Paisan. Why were you so shocked?
Paisan.
This is child's play. The real game hasn't started yet. Have you been ignoring my comments over the past 2 years? Please explain if you could.
Trent, nobody can ignore your comments. And your comments have been one-sided, one way the whole time. You've never deviated from
consistent.
You're consistent in exactly your message and getting it across, and your message is, this is nothing. It's going to get way, way worse. You're talking Armageddon in your message. And I've not been ignoring them. And getting more specifically to your comment, Mr. D. Trent, I wasn't shocked. The scenario I talked about, the experience that we had in the story I spoke about was that sellers are, first of all, there's a bit of a shock when they list at the price that they list at. They're listing lower than what they expected to be listed at. And then that's not working. So they do a price adjustment and they're shocked that they got to do that. And now they're like, okay, well, let's just get sold. They finally get their head around the price adjustment and their attitude is, okay, let's just get sold. And that price adjustment doesn't work for many of them. And that's again, the shock factor, like, holy smokes, do we still got to reduce more? That's the shock. That was the point of my message.
Yes. Okay, so next comment here comes from 1AG18. And they say, S-Dog, can you show rolling months of inventory? It could smooth out the outlier weeks. Thanks.
You want to take this one or should I?
You could take it. It's you call him A-Dog.
A-Dog. Hello, A-Dog. Appreciate your comment. And yes, what you're saying is true. And there are 100 different ways that we could present the data, and it will never end. And if we come up with 100 different ways, there'll be another comment of, oh, why don't you do it this way?
Yeah.
Look, YouTube is not our full-time thing. We do it. We have fun with it. We feel we're presenting valuable data that no one else is presenting. And that's why we do it. We feel, for the most part, most people appreciate the data we're presenting and get value from it. And yes, we could manipulate it in different ways, not manipulate it in a bad way, but show it differently. But how many angles are we going to take? From time to time, we change things up. I hope what we are providing you find value in it. We might change it up a little bit, maybe not.
Well, we have changed it up a bit in terms of the charts that we're providing. If you watched any of last week's videos, you'll see that we've adjusted some charts to try or put in some new charts, I should say, to try and give some more detail on certain segments of the market,
more clarity on price.
And yeah, so you'll see the charts kind of evolve throughout the course of the year. We're working on that now as we speak, as we do this. But yeah, so next question here comes from user JCA 69420, and they say, noticed your watches for a while now. I think it's a Speedy Moon watch. Yes,
my watch.
You are correct. That is a
I thought they're just staring at my face.
No, they don't come from, I don't. Yeah, they probably are. But it's you're right. That is a Speedmaster Moonwatch from 1993, the best year. Yes, is the blue square one Tag Monaco? So Tag,
I don't know.
I don't know. Heuer? I don't know how to pronounce it. Tag Heuer makes a very square, bulky watch. That's called the Monaco. It's like their heritage race watch, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
But no, that is not it. What is it, Dad?
It's not a tag. It's and I hope I pronounce it right, Raymond Wheel. Raymond, is that how you say it?
I think
or Veal, Raymond Veal. Depends.
I'm going to go.
The story behind that watch is I bought that approximately 30 years ago in Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, Africa. And this is going to be a cliffhanger. That's a story for another day.
Yeah. Story for another day. But next comment here comes from Woken Up BN4VT. And Woken Up says, can a deposit be paid by regular check as opposed to demand draft or certified check?
Great question.
That is a great question. So we actually had this scenario happen very recently. I think it was like last week or 2 weeks ago at the most, where there was a buyer.
We sold that. We were representing the seller.
We had represented the seller, but there was a buyer that showed up to our brokerage with a personal check. take all the punchlines?
You're taking so long. People say that I talk slow.
Yeah,
Come on, man.
This is what it feels like to listen to you. Okay,
get to the point.
So the buyer showed up at our brokerage. This is what it feels like when I have to edit the videos and listen to you four times a day. But the buyer showed up at a brokerage with a personal check, and they got turned away. It's supposed to be a bank draft or a certified check. And
that's written right in the agreement. It's either in Schedule A or in Schedule B, bank draft or certified check or wire transfer.
And it was funny because we did an episode a few weeks ago about how it had something to do with it. I don't remember it exactly right off the top of my head, but it was something to do with the deposits and like kind of like fraudulent. And people were saying how that's why they only prefer bank drafts, or they only prefer like getting an actual physical check from the bank and giving that as a deposit to the lawyer, right? Because it was, I think it was the deposit that went to the lawyer where it was wired, and it was wired to basically a fraudulent account, whatever. But the moral of the story was that a lot of people were commenting about, oh yeah, we only deal with physical checks because, it's hard to be frauded if you're dealing with physical paper.
Yeah, but all that has changed.
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken to lawyers who don't accept physical checks. They don't accept certified funds. They don't accept bank drafts because a lot of those have been fraudulent. Well, not a lot, but they've had experiences where those have been fraudulent.
You used to deposit a bank draft?
Yeah.
And you'd have access to the cash right away.
Yeah.
Banks are not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
They're putting holds on
everything.
Certified checks, on bank drafts. Did you see the bulletin from our brokerage?
Yeah.
Normally, when a buyer gives a deposit as a bank draft or certified check, normally the next day our brokerage will issue a deposit receipt, official deposit receipt from our brokerage. Well, we got a bulletin. Now they're saying, if somebody gives a bank draft or certified check, they could wait up to 10 or 15 days to get an official receipt from our office.
Yeah. So it's, I don't think, it feels like every method people have found ways to.
Everything's being pushed towards a direct wire transfer.
Yeah. But, okay. So next question here comes from 9mm Dump. And they say, hey, Sessa, could you do an average price per square foot for condos? That would be really helpful. I know layout matters more, but it's an interesting metric. So
absolutely, it's an interesting metric.
We talked about this. We talked about this in last week's video. And so I guess this person didn't watch last week's video, but we can't necessarily do price per square foot because, there's over 100 in sales. I think last week there was 180 if my memory serves correct, there was 183 sales in condos for the city of Toronto only. And we would have to physically go into each one to get the actual square footage because it gives you a range, but we'd have to go in and to get the actual square footage. And that's just not possible because a lot of times people don't even list the accurate square footage. You can have two identical units and one will be listed at 600 square feet and the second one will be listed at 700 square feet. And it's because one of them decided to include the 100 square foot balcony and one of them didn't, but it's the identical unit. And so it would to go in and do an analysis of each and every single condo that gets sold each week. It's just too
time consuming.
Yeah, it's just too time consuming. So that's not going to happen. But what we've done is we've broken them down now into 1 beds and 2 beds, and that's where you can really start to see a difference in the
volume and pricing.
Yeah. So you can kind of, I mean, there's 1 beds, 1 dens that are over 1,000 square feet, but there's not many of them.
There's few and far between.
So that kind of, that grouping we feel kind of does a pretty good job of giving you the picture of the the picture of the condo market. I mean, as best as we can, right? So yeah, that's that. Okay, next comment here comes from Judy Liang 55. And Judy Liang asks, would you please let us know what kind of penalties usually for delayed closing of home? So this is in regards to the video that we did where we were talking about how the seller needed an extension for the closing because of the whole non-resident holdback.
I remember.
And so it got extended for a month, and they ended up having to pay the fees for our client's delay on the closing. So
look, when a closing is set for whatever day it's set at and it doesn't close, the other party is the party who's not at fault for delaying the close is most likely going to incur certain costs. For example, the seller who's thinking they're closing today and the buyer is delaying the closing for whatever reason, well, now the seller is carrying their mortgage for an extra 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever the day is. Now the seller who thought that they were going to be closed on that day, that has their truck full of furniture, now cannot, maybe they got to cancel that, or there's all sorts of different fees and costs that one party will incur. And those could range from a couple $1,000 to $10,000, $15,000. It depends. We had a situation a couple of years back where it wasn't our client's fault. Our client was the buyer, and it was closing. Sorry, I'm going to say this again. Our client was the seller, and the buyer at the last minute had to delay closing. Now, our client, the seller, also bought another property, and they needed their sale to close on their property. So what happens then? If our client doesn't close on their property, then they're open to be sued by that client that we're buying from. It just became a bit of a mess, and our client, to be able to close on their purchase, ended up getting private funds to do that. Well, that fee, that cost, got put onto the buyer who never closed on our property. So that 1 week, it was only delayed a week, there was a $10,000 fee cost associated to my client just because of that extension. So it all depends. It's usually not too much, but sometimes there could be other circumstances causing those costs to shoot through the roof.
Yeah. Okay, so next comment here comes from Malawi Gold. And Malawi Gold says, how low percentage-wise will single-family homes drop in the next year or two?
Nobody can answer that question with any kind of accuracy. I don't know if prices are going to drop by a large percentage, a small percentage, stay flat, go up. There are so many factors these days. I'm not going to answer that because I can't with any kind of accuracy, and I want to be accurate, and I don't just throw numbers out there.
But there will be a lot of people that will be prepared to answer that question.
Absolutely,
and
there will be
very definitive dates and times as to when things will happen, and just take everything that you hear in those departments with a grain of salt, because I think anyone that specializes in this stuff, it's just very difficult to predict when things are going to happen. So,
and they will tell you, depending on what you're doing, to buy now or sell now.
Yeah. And so, okay, next comment here comes from Crypto Bull Bear. And Crypto Bull Bear says, I believe I'm going to change it a little because I think he meant to say could, but he says, how could the buyer or any of its representatives know in advance the non-resident's tax implications that could affect the closing?
Sometimes that's tough.
I think that was a very nuanced show that we got into.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more detail and kind of back end that could have been provided. And I mean, for the short segment of the show that we did, we couldn't provide too much context, but it's also a little difficult because a lot of situations are different, right?
Let's say you're a buyer.
Mhm.
How do you know if the seller is a non-resident? You don't, basically. You got to count on the seller providing that information and the agents asking the questions and hope the response is the truth. Like and the lawyers asking the right questions and hope the responses are the truth right now. And that's just the system the way it is right now.
Once it gets to the lawyer's hands, I know from firsthand experience, I worked at a real estate law firm for many years before joining you. But like these are questions that the lawyer does ask. It's in some of the documents that the seller has to sign. And so this is something that the seller's lawyer should have noticed. But at the same time, when those documents get signed is a little bit late too.
Let me just interject here. So it's also in some of the agreements of purchase and sale that the seller promises that, they're not a non-resident. But you're counting on the seller telling the truth.
Well, yeah.
Right? So the lawyer will ask, are you a non-resident? Or are you a resident, depending on how they ask? Mm-hmm. You're counting on the seller telling the truth.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's very complicated, but if they're, that is more, the onus is more on the lawyer to figure out the tax status of the person, right? But it could have very severe implications on a buyer.
On the buyer.
Right? Because the buyer is the one with the money that's being transferred to the seller. And so there's a big onus on the buyer to make sure that everything's
on the buyer's lawyer.
Yeah, to make sure that everything's kind of done according to or done correctly and accurately according to the CRA.
And
right?
if there's suspicion of the seller being non-resident, the seller kind of has to prove that they are a resident.
Yeah, and we've the lawyer that we deal with now is overly cautious.
She's awesome.
She's overly cautious when it comes to this because she's seen a few of these cases, and so anytime there's any discrepancy where it could potentially be that the person selling is a non-resident, she will automatically basically tell the lawyer for the seller that, hey, listen, I'm holding back this amount of money until you prove to me that they're not. Right. And so that's a safeguard too. And that's just having a good lawyer, because I'm sure there's other lawyers out there that maybe not be so prudent.
It's a significant percentage.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. I mean, 50% of the sale proceeds, right? So $1 million,
50% of the sale price,
500,000. But again, so going back to that video, there were people that commented on that video saying like, "Oh my God, the I can't believe how much they want or how much the CRA takes and stuff like that." Guys, that's not the amount that gets paid. That is how much gets held back in order to cover the amount that needs to be paid. So they're not taking 50% of your sale price. They're just holding that back until taxes get paid. There's people that, they get their tax clearance certificate and
they owe
$0. They owe nothing because they've already paid it. Right. And they just needed the certificate to prove that it was paid. But, so that's, it's not the amount that was paid. The 25%, 50%, those are not the amounts that are paid. Those are just the amounts that are held back in order to make sure they can be paid. Taxes can be paid if that situation arose. Is it arisen? Arised? Arised it. If that situation
arised it.
Then that's the amount.
We speak it a good English on this channel. We speak it a good English.
The next comment here and last comment comes from MKD319.
Is that Mickey D?
MKD319. And they say, "Love your videos. The watch half past Freckles was funny." You remember last time?
I remember that.
My dad always said,
half past the Freckle.
My dad always said, Same time as yesterday, but a day later. That's funny. See so my
A hair past the freckle.
He always says if I go, what time is it? He goes, the hair past the freckle. And I've heard it so much time that it burns.
Good times.
Burns inside of me.
Good times.
It
good times.
bothers me so much. I'm glad you found it funny though, because I didn't.
There's nothing that makes a parent happier than just driving their kids insane.
I guess. Well, you're doing a good job, bud. You're doing a good job.
I'm good at it.
Anyways, that ends this video. Thank you guys for tuning in for another Sunday Q&A. Please leave your questions below in this video. Leave your questions in the videos throughout the week, and you could be featured on this show here. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you next week.
Enjoy your weekend, everybody.
Yes.